Good afternoon. Apologies for the slightly late start. Zoom was not playing ball this afternoon, but hopefully things are all right now. Welcome along. Just as before we get started, just to get a quick show of hands. So first of all, can you just give me a thumbs up or hands up if you can hear me? Excellent. For those of you who don't know where it is, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a couple of icons straight off the bottom of your screen. Might have to run your mouse off the bottom of the screen to see them. One of those is a hands up, and the other one is the questions and answers box, so you can ask questions or give comments as we go through the presentation. So let me just lower the hand. Second question is just put your hands up if you can see my screen. Excellent. Oh, okay. And the chat box as well. I've got another means of communication. Sorry, I thought we'd only got the Q&A. Excellent. Good afternoon, Abraham. So let's make a start then. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Rupert Turton. I'm the managing director of Action Coach in Oakham, and we work with business owners so that they become the best they can be, achieving their business and personal goals, whether that is more time to do what they want to do, or to have a better performing team, or actually just simply to make more money. Action Coach is, for those of you who are not familiar with us, we've worked with all sorts of businesses all over the world, running to a defined system that pretty much all of the coaches use wherever you are in the world to make sure we give those same consistent results and when we work with business owners. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about goal setting in a time of change. My background, a good part of my career was a project and program manager. So getting things done is really part of my makeup. I also worked as a bid manager, which is like a program manager, but on steroids, with an awful lot to do in a very short time. I think fundamental to today's conversation, though, is if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you're just never going to get there. If you don't, and also if you don't move towards your goals, it's simply an idea. It's never going to become anything more. So those of you who joined Angela's webinar last week, Angela spoke about setting your vision and why that is so important, and she talked a bit about how that ties into your values and your purpose and your why inside the business. Today, I'm going to take that into a slightly more granular level. I'm going to talk about setting your goals and how to achieve them. And I think all of this we've got to take against a background at the moment of change in the environment that we're living in. I think obviously Brexit was a change. We've got a massive impact at the moment from COVID-19. So all businesses naturally evolve over time and in reaction to changes in customer behavior, new technologies and staffing changes. And when you're setting your goals, it's obviously the background we have to be doing this against. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk a bit about why we set goals and the reason for doing it. We're going to be looking ahead to the different types of goal that we could be setting. Also going to talk a bit about SMART and what that means. And fundamentally, it's about making sure that we're very specific in what the goal is and what it's looking to achieve when we're setting it. Secondly, of course, the goals have to be, fourthly, the goals have to be realistic. And we're going to talk a bit about making those goals realistic for those of us who naturally procrastinate with achieving anything. I want to talk a little bit about the power of why and why that ties in so tightly to what you are doing, your why, what you're looking to do, what your business is trying to achieve, what your purpose is, why that's so important when setting goals. And then finally, just talk about changing, pivoting in these times of change and what impact that could have on your business. So first of all, why do we set goals? So I think actually, before we even do this, guys, while we're there, do you want to just type into the chat box, in what areas of your life do you set goals? Just pop that into the chat box. While you're doing that, I think fundamentally, how many of us have at some point in our lives, we've got our coat, got our hats and gloves on, we've picked up the car keys, we've walked out to the car, we've got in the car, we've started the engine, and we've just driven off. We just don't do it. Whenever you do something, wherever you start off on a journey, you define your destination. You might not find necessarily the final destination, but you at least define the next stage on the route. And it's exactly the same when we're setting goals inside a business. We need to think about where we're going, or we're simply never going to get there. We'll just finish up staying exactly where we are. Also, of course, once we've set those goals, we've started moving towards it, and we start to build a little bit of momentum, it's much easier to keep on moving. Once you've got that momentum behind you, you can start to see some progress. The momentum keeps you going. And to achieve your goals, you may also, when you think about this, to achieve your goals, you may have to change as well. You may have to think about how you behave, what you know, the knowledge you have, how you spend your time, and also who you spend your time with as well. So I've got a couple coming in on the areas in your life where people set goals. We've got obviously work, as you'd expect, relationship. Tony's said it's always been just a wish list. And then, here we go, more interesting, sport, doing a park run in 28 minutes, which actually sounds quite a time to me as well. That sounds like good going. Yeah, so why do we need to set goals? Let's just talk about that for a second. So first of all, it's to set your RAS, and I'll talk about the RAS in a few minutes, but it's basically the filter to your brain to identify opportunities that you need to make progress. You need to make progress towards your goals. Secondly, it gives you something to aim for. It makes you understand where you're going both in your personal life and, of course, where you're taking the business. And once you've set a goal and you've set that target for what you're trying to achieve, you may not necessarily achieve exactly what you're expecting, but you're going to come in pretty close. If you aim for the stars, you might well hit the moon. And also, of course, you need to celebrate success. When you achieve a goal, you should be celebrating that. And obviously, different types of goal, you're going to have different types of celebration. So, I mean, for minor things, it might be for a small goal, it might be as simple as just maybe going out for a beer after work or going out for dinner. For bigger goals, it might be that holiday you've always dreamed of having. But you've got to make sure you celebrate success. And to do that, you've got to know when you've achieved something, which is what goals are so important for. And then, of course, if we do miss our goals, it gives us something to compare to, and we can analyze what went wrong and make sure we don't make the same mistakes again. Now, also, goals help with setting our belief in helping us understand where we're going. It gives us confidence that we can actually achieve something. So as we start to move towards a goal, we'll start to believe more and more in our ability to make that goal a reality. And that belief will get bigger as we get closer and we start to see progress towards the goal. And also, of course, inspirational goals as well. So who would have thought back in 1990, Walmart made a declaration to become a $125 billion company by the year 2000. Fantastic inspirational goal for the business. And it's hard to believe Stanford University back in the 1940s, they wanted to become the Harvard of the West, and look where they are now. And also, it starts to build some ambition as well. You've set the goal, it gives you something to achieve. It helps to build your ambition to make sure that you achieve it. And of course, if you making sure you achieve those goals as well allows you to hold yourself to account. And then think a little bit about what makes a great goal. It needs to be something that's very specific. It needs to be measurable. So you need to describe exactly what you're going to achieve. You need to be able to describe that you've made progress towards it or that you've achieved it. You need to set a time around when you're going to achieve that goal, and it has to have a purpose. It's got to connect to your why. That's what I was saying right at the beginning. You need to understand what your purpose is, what your why is for both for your business and for your wider life, and make sure that your goals align with that. Otherwise, they just have no connection into the reality as you see it. And of course, these goals have to be achievable, and they have to be realistically achievable. And if there's more than one person in your business, of course, make sure that your goals align with everybody else in the business. So how does this all tie together? So right at the top of the mountain, we've got the mission. The mission is the where you're trying to get. So the vision is where you're trying to get to. It's what your final goal is going to be. And then to get there, it's our mission that describes the route that we're going to take. It describes how our company is going to achieve that vision. And then beside that, of course, you've also got your company culture. So what kind of people do you want to take to the top of the mountain? What sort of culture do you want to develop inside your organization? And then along the route, you have the goals. The goals, if you like, are the waymarks along the way that make sure that you're going in the right route. It signals the road that you're taking. It signals your progress up that route. And those goals could have various forms. I mean, part of your goal might be to have an inclusive culture where everybody has a voice, and you're doing that by holding regular meetings with the team and the individual staff to make sure that happens. Maybe that's one of the goals in your business. Now, I mentioned a few minutes ago the reticular activating system. Actually, before I even start on this, who knows what the reticular activating system is? Just hang on, let me lower the hands and just pop your hands up if you know what the reticular activating system is. Oh, got one. Oh, not many of you, know. Okay, I'll let me explain then what the RAS is. So the RAS is fundamentally, it's the filter for your brain with all the things that are going on around us. There's every moment of our day. There's thousands of things going on around us. Little things like pieces of paper blowing in the wind, or things on your desks, something moving beside you. Thousands of things going on around us all the time. So fundamentally, it's too much for your brain to deal with. There's too much activity going on around us for your brain to deal with it. It would simply become overloaded. So over time, we have evolved to have the reticular activating system, which acts, hang on, sorry, should have moved on a slide, which acts as the compass for the brain. It filters out any irrelevant information that we don't need for our survival. So historically, the reticular activating system was there to look for things that might kill us, things that were trying to eat us, things that might hurt us. It was also there to look for things to nourish us. So it'd be looking for maybe sources of food or things that we could eat. It's fundamentally there to help us survive, to filter out the things that don't matter to our survival, let us focus predominantly on the things that do matter for our survival. Now, of course, in this day and age, we don't have to worry particularly about being eaten or being killed in our day-to-day lives, and food is in plentiful supply. So actually, the RAS from that perspective becomes redundant. But by setting goals, what it allows us to do, what our brain will then start to do, is it's focusing on something we want to achieve, and it will start to find ways to achieve that goal. So the great example everybody uses, if you went out and decided you were going to buy yourself a stupid red Jeep, that red Jeep, when you're looking to, once you've made the decision that's what you wanted to buy, probably when you picked it up from the showroom, you will start to see red Jeeps absolutely everywhere. And it's because your brain is looking for that particular type of car, that particular color, because it sees that as part of what its survival. So in the business world, that's what allows us to look for objectives. So the RAS will look for things we need to achieve. So it will look for those people that we need to meet, those places we need to go, those products that will help us achieve our goals. Let's also talk for a moment about the types of goal there are as well. So short-term, medium, long-term goals, to a degree, these are subjective, but I mean, fundamentally, I think we can agree that a lifetime goal is something we want to achieve. So it's going to be a long-term goal, and we don't know what that is. I mean, it might be something like to earn enough money to benevolently be able to give significant money to charity in the future. It might be to be seen as a leading authority in your field, whatever your field might be. It's probably fair to say that Boris Johnson's lifetime goal was to be Prime Minister. And then you've got the stepping stones along the way, so the smaller steps you need to take to achieve that. So it might be to start a business, then grow that business to £1 billion, then sell the business, and then spend the next 20 years giving that money to various charities that you see of worth. Or it could be as simple as get yourself elected as an MP, get yourself onto the cabinet, get someone else to do the stuff that you know is going to go badly, and then get yourself voted in as PM. And also, when you set these goals, we need to make sure that they are measurable, well defined, very clearly defined, and that's where we use the SMART to define what those goals are. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So it needs to be specific. We need to be able to describe what the goal is going to achieve, what's going to look, what is the final destination. So is it going to, can you describe it? Can you see it? Can you look at, draw a picture of what it's going to be? Very specific in what that goal is going to be. So back when I was running projects, I used to regularly run projects with people who I actually couldn't do the work that they were doing. So they had to describe what they were going to deliver to me in terms that I, as a manager, would understand. So they had to be very specific, had to describe what I was expecting to see. Secondly, it's got to be measurable. So we need to know when we've achieved the goal, but also, of course, so we can measure progress towards achieving that goal. Now, there's no point setting a goal if it's not attainable, so we have to be able to realistically achieve the goal we've set ourselves. That might mean we have to get maybe further education or develop new skills, but the point is that actually it's within our grasp and it's something we can attain, and we can put a plan in place to achieve it. It obviously has to be relevant, and in particular, it has to tie into the bigger purpose, the bigger why, the bigger vision for your organization or in your personal life. And of course, it needs to be time-based. There's no point setting a goal if you don't also describe when that goal is going to be delivered. And also, what types of goal are there? So different types of goals. So career, so maybe to be the CEO by the time I'm 50. I think I've blown that one. The financial, so I want to earn £1 million a year. It could be just a personal development goal. So I want to be a more considerate person. It could be educational, to get an MBA or maybe train as a counsellor. It could be in our relationship. Maybe you want to spend more time with your family while they are still young, and so you don't miss those growing up years in their lives. Or it could be physical and health. Actually, simply, I want to be healthy. You've got to ask yourself, of course, how are you going to measure being healthy? So you've got to put some parameters around it. And also the types of goal, and in particular, the big, hairy, audacious goal. The big, hairy, audacious goal is the thing that you, for whatever reason, can't see yourself ever achieving, but your absolute dream. This is what you would like to be. This, in the ideal world, is what you would like to be able to achieve. This is what you want your business to be, what you want your life to be. This is where you would like to finish up. The big, hairy, audacious goal is that thing where if you just sat back with your eyes shut, the thing that you'd never dreamed that you were going to achieve, but would love to be able to do it, you just can't quite see how you're going to get there. Great examples, if qualitative or quantitative, big, hairy, audacious goals. Was Walmart, as I mentioned earlier, in the 1990s. They set the goal of becoming a $125 billion company by the year 2000. Ford, very early in the 1900s, said they were going to democratize the automobile, make it available to everybody. And Sony, in the years 1950s, they set the target of becoming the company most known for changing the worldwide poor quality image of Japanese products. And look where they finished up as one of the leaders in electronics globally. And then, of course, there's those big goals that against the common enemy, the David versus Goliath. So Nike in the 1960s said they wanted to crush Adidas. Honda in the 1970s said they were going to destroy Yamaha. And then, of course, there's the role model type goals as well. So it's, for up and coming companies. So I'm a mountain biker. One of the big brands in mountain biking is Gyro. In 1986, they set themselves the goal of becoming the Nike of the cycling industry. They've definitely achieved that. And then Stanford University, who are pretty much a minor university in the 1940s, they set themselves the goals of becoming the Harvard of the West of America. Big, hairy, audacious goals, things that you want to achieve, can't see how you're going to get there. Just stand up and set those goals. Now, to achieve those goals, we've got to think a little bit about how we're going to get there. So working backwards through this formula, everyone can set goals for what they want to have in life. What we have, new things we want to get, but what we also have to do is think about what we have to do to achieve those things. Most people realize that once they've defined the have, they have to work out what they have to do. But what most people don't realize is that they also have to change their identity to be the person they need to be in order to do those things, to achieve those goals. Hence the formula is be times do times have. And when you put a business plan together, that's when you're going to cover the do and the have. You've then got to work out what you need to become as a business leader to make that happen. So if you want to have a £1 million company, what do you need to do to make that happen in terms of developing your skills around sales, around financial management, around leadership, potentially around the technical skills that your industry requires? And to do that, also, you have to think about what do you have to be to make that achieve. So maybe you have to be more outgoing. Maybe you have to have learned to be a financial person. Maybe you have to spend more time with successful people to learn what they are doing, but also to mingle with the people who are giving you the greatest chances of success in your particular industry. So when we are setting goals, what we're doing is shaping the person that we want to become. And it's our experiences that shape us. If we have a experience of being successful, we perceive ourselves as successful. So when I'm out on the mountain bike where I used to live, my wheels never left the ground. We never did jumps. We never did anything like that. It was all pretty much on the ground. We'll do some fairly technical downhills, but I could pretty much guarantee 95% of the time my wheels wouldn't leave the ground. Now I've moved up to Rutland. A lot of the mountain bike we're doing with the group I've joined now, it's a smaller area, but they do a lot more jumping, a lot more time with the wheels off the ground. I fundamentally have to learn to be able to jump on a mountain bike. And I can't go straight to doing the big jumps. I'm not going to go straight in and do a 5-foot or 10-foot jump. I've got to start small and build up to it to develop my confidence that I can do this. And so I'm going to start that by starting on smaller jumps and then building my confidence over a period of time to achieve my full potential of doing those bigger jumps. I mean, fundamentally, there is no reason I can't do it. I just do not have the skills and the confidence to do it at the moment. So part of what we're doing by pushing ourselves towards our goals is developing our performance and our potential to be able to achieve those goals. It's the fact we need to concentrate on what we want to be, which will then decide who we need to become. And also, of course, you need to get into the habit of realizing your goals. You can't get lazy about it. If you just accept that you're not going to achieve your goals, there's really not much point having them in the first place. So sit down and have a bit of think about what your goals are. So think about obviously what you want to achieve this year, or even as part of this year. What do you need to achieve this quarter? What do you need to achieve this year? Think about what you need to achieve in 3 and 5 years, and actually what your big goals is. So we should be getting to those bigger goals now. This is where your BHAG starts to come into place, your big, hairy, audacious goal. Your 5-year goal should be pushing the boundaries of what you think you can achieve. And then maybe if it's a really big goal, stretch that out to 10 years. And don't worry too much about how you get to that final goal. Once you achieve the 5-year goal, you'll start to see how you're going to get through the next 5 years to get to that bigger goal in 10 years' time. It's very much like walking over the hills. As you climb up the first hill, you really can't see anything beyond the top of the hill and the valley that you're in. Once you get to the top of the hill, you can now see the valley before you. You can see where you're going to go next, and you can see where the next goal is, where the next summit is that you need to achieve. So you start to climb that hill, you can start to see the next peak. Exactly the same thinking when you're setting your goals. Don't worry too much about not knowing the direct way to get there. Think about what you need that goal to be. Now, for those of you who are serial procrastinators, let's talk a little bit about procrastination. So just a quick show of hands. Let me drop the hands again here. I've got too many screens operating at the moment. So how many of you have set goals that you want to achieve and then done nothing to make them happen? Quick show of hands. Most of you, by the looks of things. And fundamentally, you set the goals, you believe you're going to achieve them. Suddenly, you get tangled up in daily life, and your dreams and goals, they just slide to one side. And it's so easy to do. And actually, in these turbulent times, it's even easier to do it. So Tim Urban wrote a book, Wait But Why, and he talks about the rational decision maker. Oh, hang on, where's he gone? There you go. The rational decision maker. Rational decision maker is if you like, the man who is driving you. He's the person who decides what you're going to do. He's the one. He's in your brain. He's driving you forward. He's doing the things that make sense. Yeah, he thinks about long-term goals. He's not a child. He does not know what to be done. He knows how to focus and get things done. And he's decided that this is the perfect time to get work done. But the instant gratification monkey, he says nope. So his idea, he's got better ideas. Let's watch a bunch of YouTube videos on creatures of the deep. And then let's go on a YouTube spiral that takes us through Richard Feynman talking about string theory and ends with watching interviews with Justin Bieber's mum. And when we've done that, we'll reorganize our to-do list. We'll check out the stock prices on Amazon. Then we're going to split our iPhoto album into smaller, more specific albums. And by then it's going to be 2 o'clock. And we've got an appointment at 4:30. So it'll be really too late to start any work at that point. So any of you recognize that? Now, Tim Urban also talks about the panic monster. And the panic monster spends most of his time just sitting in the background. But when a deadline is looming, when a deadline is really quiet, the panic monster appears and scares the instant gratification monkey away. And Tim Urban summarizes that we all work like this, but it depends when the panic monster turns up. He'd also suggest actually that breaking tasks down into smaller subtasks give us a better feel for where we are and unleashes a smaller but just as effective panic monsters. But to make this work, you have to have set your goals and about what you want to achieve and make them happen. So Tim Urban, he talks about when he was preparing at university for his final year thesis. So he started off with a plan that looks pretty much like this. The plan was constant work throughout the year, finishing a couple of days before he had to submit his final thesis, giving him a nice steady workload, time to do other things in his life, time to do the things he wanted to do, maybe his social life and maybe some additional studying around the side. Nice gentle ride in, complete the thesis on time. At the end of the year, he'd done absolutely nothing, but not to panic. He could replan and it was still achievable. He'd have to work slightly harder in the second and then even harder in the third year to achieve it, but he would still be able to submit his thesis in a reasonably controlled manner and with times to do the other things that he wanted to do in life. Now, at the end of the second year, and actually halfway through end of the second term and halfway through the third term, he'd actually still done absolutely nothing. So his plan to complete his thesis on time looked pretty much like this. And that's when the panic monster kicks in, and he delivered his thesis, but by the skin of his teeth. And obviously, the impact of that is reduced quality of what you're doing. It's not meeting the standards you defined. It really isn't the ideal situation to be doing anything. All because of the instant gratification monkey. But what Tim was suggesting, a far better plan, when at the beginning of the year would have looked something like this. Starting off each term and half term with individual sub-projects and publicizing the deliverables. So not only did he know what he was delivering at each term and each half term, but he'd also communicated that to other people. So he started to put a little bit of pressure on himself to make sure he achieved them. And then as he achieved that deadline, the panic monster would appear, but in a much smaller form, make sure he achieved that goal going each period. So cumulatively, by the end of the year, he completed his thesis in a controlled manner. And Tim Urban is summarizing that we all work like this, but it depends when the panic monster turns up, and then using the panic monster to our advantage. And hence breaking down the task into smaller subtasks, giving us a better feel for where we are, and also unleashing that smaller panic monster. Now, many of you are probably familiar with the Eisenhower matrix. Just to talk through this quickly, fundamentally, what we're saying is that we can divide all tasks really across two axes. One of those is things that are important and things that are not important, and the other is things that are urgent and things that are not urgent. By default, and particularly if we're being event-driven, we will spend the majority of our time in quadrant one, where things that need to happen, they're both important in that they have to happen to help us drive the business forward, but also they are time restricted and have to happen now, making them urgent as well. And if we're not very careful, we spend the majority of our time in that quadrant. Now, the ideal place or the ideal things we want to work on are, of course, the things that drive our business forward but are not urgent. And that's quadrant two. Now, almost by definition, something that's in quadrant two will eventually fall into quadrant one. That's when the panic monster starts to come into play. Anything that's in quadrant two, if we've not done it while it's still not urgent, it will eventually become urgent to us. Now, the other thing we talk about is things that are not important but are urgent. This is things like people asking us questions, people looking for our input, people standing by who need to talk to us now. Great example is the telephone ringing. Telephone calls are pain in that we don't know if it's an important call or a not important call until we pick up the phone. So it could be in quadrant one, it could be in quadrant three. And then the things we really don't want to be worried about, those things in quadrant four, those things that are not important and they're not urgent. Excuse me, I'm going to have to cough. Excuse me, sorry guys. So as you work your way around the quadrants, those things that are in quadrant one, those things that are important and urgent, those are the things we have to do, and we have to do it now. Now, those things that we can identify that are important but are not urgent, we can defer those things. And more importantly, we can plan in when we want to complete those activities to make sure we achieve them. Now, the other thing, of course, is with things that are urgent but not important. Maybe that's things that we can delegate to somebody else in the organization or maybe outsource it. And those things that are sitting in the not important and not urgent, so things like looking at Facebook, doing social media, just don't do them. Just delete them, take them off the list altogether. So quadrant one, that's where the panic monster lives. That's when he starts to apply the pressure. Quadrant four is where the instant gratification monkey lives. Think about this whenever you're deciding what your next activity needs to be and what you're going to do next. So we've talked about setting your goals, we've talked about why goals are important, we've talked about RAS, and we've talked about managing procrastination. Let's just talk a little bit also about just setting those goals in the wider context as well. So when you're setting your goals, it's not just about work. This is me at work, by the way. Not just about work. What I do at work is part of my bigger life. So there's other things that I want to do. So I want to spend time with Angela. I want to spend time with my kids and their partners. And I want to spend time with my dog, the things that matter to me personally. I also want to go off and do things that I like to do. I like to go walking. I like to go cycling. And of course, I also want to spend some time with friends and want to go traveling. My life is made up of a number of things that I want to do. One of those things is being at work. So when you're setting your goals, you need to think outside simply what you need to achieve for work, but think about how work is going to impact your wider life. And so you've got to think in both planes, if you like. You've got to think about what you want to achieve in your wider life and how that impacts work. Now, also, when you're doing that, you've also got to think about those goals. How much time are you going to need to achieve those, to do those things, and how much money are you going to need to finance it, which is all going to have a bearing when you set your goals. So one of the first questions we always ask a new client is, what would you do if time and money were no object? From a coaching perspective, the answer is almost invariably not very exciting. It's usually something along the lines of not much, maybe a holiday with the family, I suppose. But typically after a few weeks, once the clients had a chance to think about this, they usually come back with a far bigger answer. They come back with things like, I want a new house, I want a new car, I want to take that big holiday we've always dreamed about. They come back with big plans. It's maybe to set up a charity, do something good in the community. Suddenly, when they actually sit down and think about what they achieve, they move away from the constraints that have been applied on them by what they know they can traditionally achieve, and they start to think about what they really like to achieve, those bigger plans. But you need to then ask yourself, to achieve those plans, how much time do you need? How much time do you need to be at home if you're going to have better family time? Where is that holiday? What are the holidays you want to take? Maybe that's the big family trip to Disneyland or the cruise around the Caribbean. Whatever it is, what's that bigger goal that you want to achieve? And of course, how much is it going to cost for you to maintain the lifestyle you want? Those activities you want to do, how much money do you have to make to support the activities you want to do? How much is that holiday going to cost you? And actually, that bigger house, what does that bigger house look like, and how much is that going to cost you as well? Just go off at a slight tangent for a moment. We will come back in a second. So I don't know how many of you have read, actually, a quick show of hands. Let's just drop the hands again. How many of you have read Paul McGee's book, Sumo? Quick show of hands. Okay, that was fairly conclusive. None of you. Fair enough. Paul McGee wrote a book called Sumo. It's actually quite a good read. It's about, fundamentally, it's talking about how you deal with events in life. Very good book. Paul McGee also, if you find him on Facebook, does a series of short videos on a fairly regular basis, which are quite educational, quite thought-provoking as well. Paul McGee talks about this formula: events plus the reaction equals the outcome. So the event is something that happens. Traditionally, we would have said that something happens which determines an outcome, but the reality is actually an event happens. It's how you react to that event that determines the overall outcome. So for example, if you went and pitched for a big contract, maybe the biggest contract that your business has ever pitched for, you've done a really good job of the pitch, everything's going really well, you've had a phone call from the purchaser telling you the favorite to get the business, knowing you've got this massive business that you're going to have to deliver. You've turned down other work in the meantime, and then you get that phone call saying, really sorry, but we've decided to go with somebody else. You have not won the business. So at this point, you react. Your reaction, you blow a fuse, you tell the customer what you think in a series of expletives, and the end result is you never work for that client again. So, not the ideal outcome. Let's just think that through. Let's the same story. So you pitch for the big contract, everything's going really well. You've had the phone call with the buyer who tells you're the favorite to get the business. You've turned down other work, and then you get the phone call. The client says, really sorry, you have not been selected. We're going with somebody else. Your reaction? So first of all, you go for a long walk and calm down. Then you email the client and say, that's a real shame. I'd really appreciate some feedback from you on my proposal. So next time I submit a similar proposal, I can learn and not be more successful with similar deals. Customers very unlikely to say no. You can then meet with this customer. You discuss the feedback, so you get the learning. You also, as part of that conversation, will inevitably talk about a bit more about what you do. And 2 days later, the customer phones and asks you to do some work that is even more lucrative than the original proposal because of something he learned during that conversation. Point being that it's not the event that determines the outcome, it's how you react to that event. So that might be an extreme example, but hopefully it makes the point that it's your reaction and how you react to a particular circumstance that's likely to decide what the outcome's going to be. Now, in this current climate, businesses need to react to a whole range of things that are going on around us at the moment. So we need to look at changing customer behaviors, particularly during lockdown. And I think we're seeing people being much more cautious in where they go, which is obviously impacting a number of businesses at the moment. New technology is obviously going to have an impact on the way people behave. You've only got to look at the demise of the cinema as people were watching movies at home, and how the cinema industry has reinvented itself to become successful once again. It might be simply down to changes in our behaviors as business owners. It might be that our suppliers have changed the way they operate and we need to react to that. Or it could be changes in what the competition are doing as well. The point being, you will need to adjust your goals to deal with these changing market conditions. However, what's also likely to be true is, although your short-term goals may have to change, your longer-term goal may well remain the same. You may also decide that your longer-term goal has had to adjust because of things that are happening around you. The key thing is that what you're doing with your short-term goals will be related to that longer-term goal, and that longer-term goal needs to be rooted in something that means something to you and your organization. So you need to think about what your organization is about. What is their purpose? What is your why for that business being in place? So I've spoken about this many times before, Simon Sinek and the golden circle. Simon talks about the defining your purpose. It's the reason your company exists. In one simple sentence, it explains to people why your business exists, on the basis that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So, for example, if you speak about your company making beautiful furniture that supports the environment, that is the why. This is what we want to do. We love to make beautiful furniture and we want to support the environment. How you do that? Using wood from forests, wood sourced sustainably, and then we make the furniture using traditional skills. And what we do, well, of course, we source the wood, we cut the wood, we make the furniture, and then we sell it online, whatever the business model is. The point being, what you're talking about is why you're doing it, your purpose, not about what you do. Very worth watching. Simon fundamentally says when you're talking to any potential client, you should start by talking about why you're doing it and not about what you do. Watch the video. Simon Sinek, just Google it. Simon Sinek, the Golden Circle, and a very entertaining 10 minutes or so. Let's talk about look at a few examples of purpose from other companies. So. Just move that out of the way. So 3M, their purpose was to solve unsolved problems innovatively. Apple, who's the example that Simon Sinek used, they want to think differently. They challenge, they innovate, and they disrupt the existing marketplace. Hewlett Packard to make technical contributions for the advancement and welfare of humanity. And down a couple more I love down here. So Nike to let everybody experience the emotion of competition, winning and crushing competitors. And Disney to make people happy. So think a little bit about why you're in business. What is your why? Why do you do what you do? Why does your business exist? And then once you've done that, use that to help you define the goals that for your business. Decide what you want your business to look like. And also, of course, you've got to think about what the new normal is going to be. So actually, what your business needs to look like going forward may not be what your business looked like before the COVID-19 crisis hit, or even go back further before we started to move into Brexit. So what products and services do you need to provide? Ask yourself what you need to be selling today, not what you have been selling historically. There's likely to have shifted. And then think about, how does your business behave? Is your business, maybe it's traditionally been a hard sell business, or maybe it needs to become a gentler sort of selling organization, maybe working much more around what's best for the client. So some of the things you might want to set as your goals and your vision is, first of all, respect for each other, your clients, your teams, your suppliers, everybody that you come in contact with. Within the organization, you want to share the success of the organization, but also the pain when things don't work out. You want your company maybe to be a fun place to work. Maybe your company allows you to take your dog to work. Or maybe you want your business to be the sort of place that the sort of business that supports local good causes. Maybe it's only using sustainable products, maintaining traditional skills, or it might quite simply just be to make the money. But whatever it is, whatever your service is, what you need to provide, and the way your business behaves, you've also got to look at how that changes with the changing environment. So what impact is remote working going to have on the products and services that your business provides? With the remote technology and the way the service is delivered, I think we're going to see changes in work-life balance. I think where people start to be able to work at home, I think we're also going to see a shift in the working day. So maybe people will stop work in early afternoon, maybe at 3:30 to collect the kids from school, spend some time with the family until maybe 7 o'clock at night, and then return to work in the evening. I think it's going to impact the way people want to work. And also, I think actually the other output of COVID-19 is that we're going to see a lot more businesses sourcing their supplies from a local source as opposed to international sources. I think a lot of businesses have been quite badly hit by not being able to source their product or their components from offshore because they've been closed down through COVID-19. They want to try and mitigate that impact as much as possible in the future, and by doing that, bringing their supply chain online. So, to achieve your results, first of all, you've got to have a dream, decide where you want to go. Secondly, you've got to define your goals. What are the stepping stones you need to go through to achieve those goals? And then to achieve those goals, what new skills, what do you need to learn to enable you to drive those forward? And then, of course, you've got to put a plan in place, and none of this is going to work unless you take action. The only way to get results is to actually act on the plan that you've put in place, using the learnings you've got towards the goals you've set towards your dreams. Hopefully that's been a useful session to you guys. If there's any questions, please just pop them into the chat box or the Q&A now. If it has been useful, we'd love a review. So either on Twitter or follow us on Twitter, or leave us a review on Facebook would be very much appreciated from our perspective. And then we are contactable. If you'd like to know more, please go and have a look at our website at oakham.actioncoach.co.uk, or obviously contact us directly. We can be reached on 01572 497 030, or email me directly at rupertturton@actioncoach.com. We do a series of these webinars, so hopefully useful to all local businesses on a fairly regular basis. So every week, every Thursday afternoon, we're doing a webinar on a topic that we will hope will be of interest to many of you out there. If you've got any suggestions of things you want to talk about, please just drop us a line. We'll happily pick up those topics, assuming we have the skills to do it. Hopefully you've got something useful out of today's session. If there are no questions, and there don't appear to be any, that's everything from me. I hope that's been useful to you guys. Thanks for joining, and I'll hopefully talk to you all soon. Cheers.